Okay, so welcome to today's supervisor training class. Today we will be going over SOG, LOG, and Handbook. And then if there's time in the rest of the recording, we will go ahead and fill in with some additional information that we've missed. Next week we will be going over hiring process and PIs. But for today, our guest speaker who will be taking over is Brent Slaughter, Chief Operating Officer and Front Range Regional Manager. So Brent, take it away.
Alrighty. So today, guys, we're going to cover SOGs and LOGs. This is something that a lot of you have been involved in on the Wednesday meetings. Area managers, we talk about this stuff every Monday. So now we want to push it down to everyone and kind of get the whole team involved in creating these things. And I know that most of you area managers have done that, but we want to give a chance for everybody to kind of talk through this and make sure we're all on the same page as we move forward, so we can get these things rolling. Can somebody tell me what the purpose of an SOG is? Somebody that's not an area manager and not somebody that's been on the calls. All right, anybody that's new to this conversation, can you give me your impression of what an SOG is? All right, anybody who's not an area manager?
This is Molly. I'm on Candy's computer, but it's the standard operating guideline to streamline everything, get everyone on the same page across the board.
Right. It's really it's the standard, like you said, the standard operating guideline gets everybody on the same page, which causes us to actually create products. Right. This is where products come from when it comes to the service industry, because if you're doing it one way and I'm doing it the other way, we may both be doing it well, but until we do it the same way, it's not really a company product. It's just working over there and this works over here, kind of thing. So the creation of products that we can duplicate is one of the number one reasons why we do this. And obviously, it creates that standard. So as a company, we're maintaining a certain service level, so customers and clients know what to expect from us and have no issue with passing us on to other people that they know and trust. The perks of using these, obviously, in management, right, managing the companies, is because this gives us a chance to also control our client, right? If we walk into a hospitality client, for example, because that's what I'm most well versed with lately, we can tell them this is how we do it and this is why we do it, right? We've been in a lot of sales meeting with clients where we're telling them kind of how we have to do it and that kind of thing, but we didn't have a whole lot of evidence to back that up. Well, this SOG is that evidence. This SOG creates that subject matter expert content that says this is who we are and how we do things, and that's why you need to have us. It also, as we go down the road with these clients, prevents us from having to do certain tasks that maybe their security department or whatever department we fall under did before. For example, Four Seasons Denver, right, one of their jobs for the security department was cleaning up vomit. Anytime anyone vomited, the security department had to respond and do that. They're not properly equipped to do that. They're not properly dressed to do that. And frankly, I don't want my guys to have to do that. So we've created local LOGs at that point to explain why we don't do it and what we do in response to that, right? We'll go there, we'll take the scene over, we'll ensure that it's taken care of. We become that action extension of the GM or the manager or whomever needs to make sure that that's done. But at the same time, we have an SOG and an LOG that says we don't do this and this is why. So it helps you control the client. They also look at these, they agree to them, and then as you start to experience scope creep, which any site that's doing a good job should have to mitigate scope creep on a regular basis. The scope creep is basically just when your client starts saying, look, I'd like you guys to start doing this, or can you do this? And pretty soon, you've taken on a lot of responsibilities that you don't need to be working on, that you don't need to be focused on, or that may actually put us in some type of liability. And with an SOG complemented by those LOGs, it helps us go back to the client and say, look, we can't do this, and again, this is why we can't do certain things. Because we never want to say no, but we can come in there and say, we're the subject matter expert, here's our evidence, and this is what we can do instead. Does that make sense to everybody? Anybody have any questions on that? All right, so from the internal side, this obviously sets expectations for our people. If you take a job and you then read through those SOGs and LOGs and realize this is far outside what I can actually perform or what I intend to perform or what I want to be a part of, then you can know that right out of the gate, right? Instead of being 3 months into something and going, you know what, this just isn't working for me. So it helps us set the standard within our company so we can hold ourselves accountable, we can hold our teammates accountable to those standards. So it's very, very important when it comes to that as well. Any area managers want to chime in on any of that?
I think over here on the Western Slope, I mean, the big thing too is we're setting up these proposals and whatnot. It allows us to take that information and now we don't have to recreate it all.
Sure.
Because we know how it operates at different places. So you don't have to spend hours and hours of research before we go into a client meeting to try to take over an entire operation because we already know how to do it.
Absolutely. You know, the standardizing of these things, I mean, it's the reason the military is so functional and they work so well. They already understand their cost. They understand their labor burdens. They understand all these things it's going to take to make an operation work because they're all going off of the same standard. There's their SOP, standard operating procedures, but they're exactly the same thing. And that's the only reason they can take a bunch of people from all over the country with all different kinds of education levels and backgrounds and interests and cultures and everything else, and they can all go out and accomplish a common goal in a very short amount of time. And that's exactly what we're trying to create here. So, you know, SOGs are good. It's our foundation, but then we have to have the LOGs in order to focus on the details of a specific site, specific client, or specific service offering, right? So the LOGs, you know, maybe an example is we don't change batteries in smoke detectors. That's in one of our fire SOGs. However, if the client says, well, this is what I need, then we can develop a local LOG that says we don't do that, but here's what we do to report when the batteries need to be changed or when it sounds a certain alarm that says they need to be changed or whatever that may be. But it lets us go to the client and say, look, because of liability reasons, we can't touch that piece of equipment. We're not trained, certified. We don't need to be doing that. But we understand that we're your eyes and ears, so we've created this LOG to make sure that we can service you the best we can in this particular instance. And then it also, LOGs line out, you know, this is the person you contact. This is the exact phone number you call. This is the time that you have to conduct this particular patrol for, you know, fire mitigation or whatever it might be. So it really dives down into the details. And I know most of the site managers, contract managers, you guys have already done an excellent job of beginning to create the LOGs. And really we're kind of working this backwards now because we're in the process of developing SOGs to give those LOGs something to stand on. And ultimately our goal is to have SOGs, every single LOG be supported by SOGs. There won't be any LOG out there that you can't reference back to an SOG saying, oh, well, here's the actual guideline that this stands on from a corporate level, right? It's very much like Colorado state statute and local law enforcement. Local law enforcement can institute a statute within their city that says X, Y, and Z. It gets into details based on what they need, their culture, the people they have, that type of thing. But the standard for the state is this statute. Does that make sense to everybody? I'm sure it's pretty clear. I don't need to beat it to death. I just want to make sure everybody understands before we get into this too much. All right. So I'm going to show you a little bit about the process of how we do these. Everybody got sent an email a few minutes ago. It's got a couple of different SOGs in there. One of them is the template for SOGs. One of them is the workflow, so how these things are going to be approved. And remember, these are all living documents. So as we find better, more efficient ways to do things, we will revise them and change them. But for now, this is the way we have it set up. So I'm going to share my screen with you. Hey, Matt, will you let me know when you guys can see it? That way I know everybody's got it.
Yeah, I that.
Molly and I can see it.
Yeah, it's up.
Okay. So as you guys can see here, this Trello system that we've begun to use is just a workflow place to monitor all of this. So if you submit an email to SOG, it's going to automatically populate over here to the far left where it says inbound messages. And then that's taken through the system all the way through the approval process and then filed, and we'll show that in a second. But as you can see here, this middle, close to the middle row, these are all the SOGs that we have listed right now that need to be created. Now that's not every single one of them, because we also have a list of SOGs that I don't have up right now. We've got a list of those, and it's our wish list. But right now we're working off the top, basically the top 10, with Nathan being very, very involved in the conference and getting everything ready for that. He's kind of busy, but as soon as the conference is over, one of his primary focuses is going to be producing 10 of these SOGs a week, really cranking these things out so we can start to solidify the products that we're selling to our clients. But basically they come to this board in the works, right? So this shows the ones that are of the highest priority at this moment and that we're actually focused on. For those who've been around a while, you may know that we have a lot of this information here, there, and kind of everywhere. What we're doing is we're just going through that. We're reviewing it to make sure it's actually current. It meets all the local, state, federal guidelines, that type of stuff. And then we're putting those over into this category to get them approved. Let's see. Let's go. Well, all of them have been approved lately. So here's an LOG for VBMC. All right, so you go in here. I can click onto this doc. It'll actually open the Word document, so it gives me a chance to review it right here. So I can read through, see what I like, see what I don't like. If I've got any comments, all I have to do is come down here, type in my comments, and as soon as I do that, I hit comment. Now you can see there's been one comment here, right? So if I'm in charge of writing this LOG, I can go back in, I can look and say, okay, well, what was the comment that was made and make those changes. We're trying to keep this to where we have one single point doing the editing of the individual SOG or LOG. We have certain people strategically put on the approval process. So we can go down through here and we can make sure that these are the people that need to see this and approve it before we say yes and we move on. And we're covering it from a liability standpoint, from an operational processing standpoint, from a training standpoint. Can we afford to do it that way? Can we afford to train people to that standard? Those are the types of things that Nathan is looking at from a quality control and training standpoint. And then once everybody's approved it, then it's moved over here. Then it's moved over here to the done category. So you can see the ones that we've already gotten accomplished so far. Now once they're approved, Nathan, and only Nathan, because again, we're trying to create a single choke point so we can ensure that the standard is maintained, Nathan goes into Supervisor Documents. So everybody on this call should be able to get to these. They're in Dropbox under Supervisor Docs and then SOG LOG folder right here. So click on that, and as you can see, approved LOGs, approved SOGs. One of the ways to ensure that it's been approved is to ensure that the title's in the right format, and that's outlined in the Creating SOGs and LOGs SOG. So it tells you exactly how to make that title. Once it's like that, it's turned into a PDF format. So as we issue this, if we issue it electronically, it doesn't get modified. It doesn't get accidentally changed in some way. However, should you need the Word document, very simple to find. They're right here. So if you've got any questions about that or how to find those documents, just let me know. But it's pretty simple and straightforward. Anything you want to add on that part of the process, Todd?
Nope.
Okay.
Good.
All right, so let's go back to this.
Brand, I got a question.
Yeah.
For let's say for like the Four Seasons Denver, when we create our log, is that, I mean, I'm starting a binder down here. Do you want us to store the SOG and LOG, or can we just store the LOGs down here?
So the SOG is issued from the company, right? Here's the
Right.
We covered this before. The difference between these two is that the SOG is issued from the company. The LOGs are actually issued by the contract managers.
Right.
So the person responsible for that individual site, because you should know it better than any of us, to be honest with you. So if you look here, under there we've got Front Range, right? We've got Four Seasons Denver, and that's where all of your LOGs will be stored. That way, if Ryan needs to look up and say, what are these guys doing down in Denver to deal with X, Y, or Z issue? Or a hospital site needs to look and say, how's hospitality doing it? They can look on here, they can check out your LOG, they can get a good idea of what you're doing and create theirs. Because we don't want to constantly be recreating the wheel all across our company. We want to create that standard. So yeah, there's a place for you to store them here, and that's where we'll start putting them as of today.
Right. So I guess my question is, the only thing that I should have on as far as hard copy down here for our guys and anybody else is just the LOGs.
That's a good question. I mean, to print out all of the SOGs doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Right.
But I think that as a contract manager, if you've got LOGs for a particular issue, you need to have the SOG with that so they can reference that as well.
Okay.
Right? I've got to do X, Y, Z on a fire alarm here specifically, and then they can reference back to this is why, because as a company, this is how we do things. You know what I mean? But you don't necessarily need the, how to file a credit card receipt.
Right.
SOG.
Just specific to our site.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
And then for your approval process, all you'll do is you'll email those to LOGs or log@lonestarsecured.com, and as you email those in, they'll be added to the list for approval, and we'll go from there. So again, Nathan will be the one storing these in the actual folders in PDF format, and that's how we kind of ensure that that's the actual approved document that we need. Any other questions on that? All right, so who writes an SOG or LOG? So again, they're issued by the company, an SOG is, right? And they're issued by the site as far as an LOG is concerned. However, we should all be subject matter experts in our individual tasks that we go about throughout our day. So I would highly suggest as the contract managers get teams. I know for a fact JR is doing this down in his area. He's broken his team up, and he's got different guys assigned to different parts of this for like a BOLA response specifically, because that's something our client down here is all over right now. So he's broken it down to where each one of them are writing some of this because, frankly, he doesn't have the time to do it all by himself. So anybody can do this, and it's really the people that do the job on a daily basis are the ones that should be creating your LOGs. And it's really just a workflow document. It's a how-to, pretty much, of how you do it. So we've looked at that. What SOGs are still being created? So let me go back to this folder and I'll just show you the list here. So this is the needs outline, right? These are, as it grows, we just keep adding to this list. So if you think of things, if you have an idea, if you say, look, I think we need an LOG on X, Y, and Z, talk to your contract manager, let them get that submitted. If it's SOGs, and you want to just email SOG@lonestarsecured.com and say, look, we need an SOG covering this because I do this every day. I just don't know what our standard guideline is for the company. Maybe we have one that we just need to move up the list. Because for those of you who don't know, which I think pretty much everybody's on that call, but every Wednesday we meet and we discuss all of these. We determine what's next to be worked on, and that's how the priority is set at this point. So if you've got ideas, just throw them out there.
Hey, Brent, I think it's noteworthy to remember there's 18 people who are taking this class, so there's a bunch of people who just listen to this stuff in the middle of the night. So, encouraging them to email SOG@LoneStarSecure.com if they've got some feedback is a big deal.
Okay. All right, so here you see it says encourage people to edit the SOG, LOG, and keep it up to date. Right, things change. I mean, how many schedules do you think we've gone through down on the Four Seasons Denver project? 30, 40?
I think it's around 2.
What's 2 schedules?
200 maybe.
200 maybe. But the reason it changed is because we kept trying to find what works best. And every time we changed it, we found a way to do it a little bit better until we got to a point that said, with 232 hours, this is the best possible service and coverage we can provide our client, given their operation and when we have heavy workflow times as opposed to light workflow times and things like that. So if you're doing the job and you see SOGs and LOGs that need to be updated, we definitely encourage you to provide your input, right? That's why we've created an SOG and an LOG email address. So you can send those in. You can submit your ideas. Hey, I found this discrepancy. Hey, I found this, and this process doesn't really work anymore, or it's outdated, or the city ordinance changed, and we're not allowed to touch fire panels, and if we do, we can go to jail, because that's the reality of Denver as opposed to Vail. So they're going to vary in those types of ways. So if you see something, say something. Don't just sit on it and go, we should change that, or it's that's stupid, we do it that way. Well, if you've got an opinion, express it. Just always have a solution to it as well.
Hey, Brent, I have a question.
Okay.
This was actually from Carlos, directed to me, but I'm not sure what to tell him.
Okay.
Just wondering if we were going to have issue an LOG or an SOG for Ebola protocols for
Yes.
training for that.
Yeah. JR and his team are actually working on that right now.
Okay.
They're working on it for the client specifically, but they're also creating it as a template that we can use across the company.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you.
Brent, just to give you an update on that, it should be just about finalized down here on, with Chad. So once that gets done, I'll also go ahead and send it out to you so you guys can do what you want with it.
Okay.
Also on that subject, it's going to be heavily covered during the conference next week Thursday, and Stephanie Palmer will be in attendance, and she's actually designing for several counties what the responses are and the standards are, and she's been doing some very serious planning. So it'd be worth bringing that to the conference and having her review it.
Roger that. I'll make sure I have it with me.
All right, so I'll run through these real quick. Again, it was a good point Todd brought up. Not everybody that's doing this training is on those calls on Wednesday. So let's just look at these real quick. For creating SOGs and LOGs, right? If you read through this one, it's just all it's doing is explaining what and why, right? A lot of what we just talked about, the process, things like that. The reason this naming scheme is here is because if I go to search, I can search very easily by several different things. I could search for everything for Four Seasons Vail, and it's spaced out to where the machine can read it and provide me with just these. Or I could search LOG Four Seasons Vail. Or I could search SOG Lost and Found, for example, and I can find every SOG that has to do with Lost and Found. So make sure you're naming these things properly. So if you need to find them or if someone else needs to find them, they can find them quite easily. You want to say anything else on that, Todd?
No, we also, there's a file naming SOG that exists that we've been over. So it's, the file name, yeah, exactly like you're talking about, but that's good.
And right before this meeting, I actually went into our SOG folder and I cleaned up each title and made them fit this format. So if you see one that's not in this format, it's not an approved SOG, regardless of where you find it. So just know that's one indicator of, oh, this must be old, outdated, whatever it is. So let's see here. The workflow. And again, just because of the time restraints with Nathan's time, he hasn't been able to focus enough attention on this to make this process actually implemented just yet. However, after next week, this is the plan. And the reason they have this plan and this workflow process is because, again, this is creating our products. And we need to create these products as fast as we possibly can because of the marketing and the momentum we're building in the market. We're going to have more and more sites coming online, and we can't afford to get out there and screw it up at this point. So that's why this is put into place, is to help keep pushing that forward the entire time. So obviously Wednesdays we have our top 10 list. We choose those. By Friday, the QC office, so Nathan will be issuing those for us to review. We'll review those in the area managers meeting. So if you get something and you see something that you don't like or you want to change or you think needs to be modified, talk to your managers about it, right? Bring it up the chain. Don't start shooting emails to God and everybody because they'll get buried. A lot of us get far too many emails a day as it is. Talk to your managers and use your chain of command in order to help this process work properly. Every Monday, Nathan and I talk for over an hour about training, about quality, about all of this stuff. So we'll actually review anything that the area managers and I talk about in our meetings that day, because each of us meet for at least an hour on Mondays as well. On Tuesdays, he'll be issuing the final version of those. It'll give us enough time to review those by Wednesday, which is when we have our SOG LOG meeting, and we get everybody on there and everybody says yes, or you have a chance for one last time to say, you know what, we need to change this or that, and then those are finalized there. So we've created 10 of those to become a product basically at that meeting. And then on Fridays, obviously the LOG drafts for those SOGs will begin to come out. And I completely understand that if we issue a fire panel or fire alarm response SOG, there may be 4 or 5 LOGs that you have to write for your site in order to comply with that SOG and to list out all the detailed information that you need your guys to know to complete that task. So just do those as they come, right? Set your own priorities, figure out which ones you need to be at the top of the list, and start submitting those that way. Because again, this all fits into the operational schedule that the entire company is running off of now as well. And then it just goes through that same process. We'll review those during that SOG, LOG meeting. Everybody will give a thumbs up and we'll move forward. So any questions on the submission, what they're for, who can, any of that? Any questions on any of this stuff? It's pretty simple. It's pretty straightforward. It's something we've been trying to do for a while, but we've really started to make some good progress in the last few weeks. Everybody good on that? All right. Now, to coincide with the SOGs, LOGs, those are operational things. That's why they're called operating guidelines, because it's the way we conduct our business, right? Now, from the HR standpoint, and I'll let Candy chime in on this some too, but the handbook itself, the employee handbook, which can also be found under Supervisor Docs, under HR for Supervisors. So it's right there in that same folder. So you're going to find the SOGs and LOGs in. And there should only be, one version, right? So Candy will ensure that the version that's in this folder is the updated version, because we have several out there. All of them that are out there no longer apply. This is our handbook version. And the purpose of the handbook is to ensure that we're covering everything from a human resources and administrative aspect. Some SOGs may mirror an LOG or may mirror a handbook entry like uniform standards and things like that. But again, the SOG is our rules that we follow every day to create, to accomplish our mission, and the handbook is put out there for the administrative purposes to give us a guideline on how we create these SOGs and LOGs. I know that sounds kind of redundant, but it's important. Do you want to chime in on that at all, Candy?
Sure. So I think the easiest way to remember it is the employee handbook is black and white. There's a right and a wrong answer to everything in the handbook. The SOG is called a guideline for a reason. They're obviously a standard that we are setting for our company, but the handbook incorporates Lone Star as well as Discovery's information. So it's going to be black and white. It's also located on the employee level of Dropbox, so I did want to throw that out there. So all of our employees do have access to the employee handbook. I also just wanted to let y'all know that it has recently been updated. There are some changes that I'm sure you're all aware of that took place on 11/1. So one of them being full-time hours is now 30 hours a week. Our previous handbook stated 36 hours a week. We've also made some changes to PTO, so employees no longer accrue PTO. Only people that are in a supervisor level role or higher accrue PTO. So there's a few different changes that are in there. That is the newest version. That is the 11/1 version. And the one on the employee level is also the 11/1 version. I will actually be emailing a copy of that out to all staff, stating there are some changes. So in the past, you would have seen a Discovery outsourcing handbook with a Lone Star addendum. That has been changed. It's all one document now.
All right. So Candy, when we get those copies of the handbook, what is the process? What do you want us to do?
So I am going to request as supervisors that you do make sure that your employees are aware that there is a new handbook. Of course, we can't expect everybody to read it page for page, line by line. That would take some time, but we are going to have a sign-off sheet saying that they have accepted, just like they do when they go through new hire onboarding. It's accepting that they've received the employee handbook. We're going to do that. So I'll probably have each site get all of their employees to sign off on it, and then we'll put it, we'll keep it in Dropbox, and then it'll be a little bit more difficult for those one-off employees that work special events and that type of thing. So I'll try and follow up with those, but it is most important that the people who are working, pretty regularly are aware that we have made some changes. It's very similar to the old handbook, but there are a few changes that we do want to reference in there. And it's up to you. I would recommend printing a copy and keeping it on your location, on your site for reference, but it is available on Dropbox. So if you have a computer on site that has Dropbox, just make sure that you are linked to that employee handbook in the employee level so that they can access it at any time.
All right. So we'll actually create an SOG that addresses everything she just said. Who has to read it when they have to sign off, that type of thing. Because if we've got people working on our contracts, or if they regularly work with us, there's no reason why they can't read through this thing line by line. And I'll be the first to admit that I'm one of those people who needs to read through it line by line. I've actually got it open on my laptop here for review for the 12 version. So contract managers, area managers, we want to make sure our people do read that, because ultimately they're going to be held accountable for the standards that are in there, and we don't want to ding somebody on something that they just didn't know because we didn't force them to know the standard, if that makes sense. Anything else on the handbook? Anybody? All right. Any other questions on anything we've covered so far? Okay, Todd?
Was that the end of your agenda already?
That's it, man.
All
It's
right.
it's a pretty simple subject.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and pause the recording now, and we will be back in just a second.